Now we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what Indians are all about.
I still say we Indian people are believers in the truth. This is the way of life that was given to your people. You're born an Indian, you're going to die an Indian. Indianness is a good life. You're facing an Indian this afternoon.
And we're out here at the Claude Cox Omniplex on the festival grounds at Muskogee Creek Nation. And for good reason. Next week kicks off the big event, the 44th Annual Muskogee Creek Nation Festival. And who better to talk to about that than the Director of Tourism and Recreation, Mr. Kyle Lee, here at Muskogee Creek Nation. And Kyle, I know you're very excited. It's going to be your first festival coordinating. I know a lot of things have went into it. Tell us a little bit about what it's been like for you getting used to it.
Yeah, it's my first year, so it's all new to me. You know, I've gone to it growing up, and it's my first year actually working it. And I think it's maybe good that I'm a little bit naive on what to expect when it gets going, because I know it's going to be crazy, and we're going to be working 24/7 basically, and it's really started to pick up in the last few weeks. And there's so many people that make this happen. We have close to 1,000 volunteers, our tourism and recreation staff, and then we work closely with other departments, the city, Okmulgee Emergency Management. We met with that group yesterday, and people from counties all over that come in to help us make sure that we have a good, safe environment, and that we have a good festival for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said everyone, because there's something for everyone at this festival. If you've never been, folks, the Creek Festival, it's our big event every year, and people around here, like, it's your first festival, but we mark time in before festival, after, for BF, AF, because it's a before festival, after festival. It's sort of a just a really big event in itself, and it's, like I said, for everyone. Kids, there's going to be a free carnival. Where else can you see kids able to just come and unlimited rides the whole time, totally free concerts? I mean, tell us a little bit about what you're most excited about.
Yeah, I think the free carnival is what people don't realize, that maybe that haven't gone to it before or aren't from this area. Nowhere in this region or even around Tulsa can you have free carnival rides, and so it's really neat that we can offer that to everyone. And then the concerts this year, we're really excited about them. We've had a lot of people on social media talking about the shows, and I think Winona is probably the big get for us this year, and I think we'll have a good crowd that night for country, with Craig Campbell opening up for her. And then Saturday night, I'm excited about that show as well, because that's more of kind of what I grew up with a little bit, and same for you probably, with a little bit more of a 90s rock sound, and Tonic and Everclear. And a lot of people are like, who's Tonic? Or if you hear a couple of their songs, you're going to know who they are. And I think they're both going to put on a good show. I think either one could be the headliner that night. And so I think just expecting some huge attendance again this weekend, and it's going to be a good year for us. Yeah,
I've been doing some YouTubing. I did couple of Tonic's recent shows in March, and those guys sound so good still. Not to just focus on them, but they're all going to be great. I know Everclear recently played Hard Rock, and a lot of people went to that show too. So a lot of excitement out there. I know you touched on it a little bit, but really, Kyle, one of your organization's greatest responsibilities is to keep people safe. There's a lot of people out here on festival weekend, a lot of people, and safety is a really top priority. And you said not only is it Creek Nation Light Horse, but different county law enforcement officers, things like that, all pitch in together to make this really safe, incident-free place during festival time.
Yeah, I had no idea how many different counties were involved and organizations were involved. They come from all over, and they're all excited to help. And one thing that we do that I think is really great is all the kids get wristband, and we'll have a station for any kids that are lost to find parents, find them. And with recent events in the past couple of years, with some different concerts across the country, we want to make sure that we keep everyone safe here, and we're going to provide some additional just barricades blocking for roads so people can't, you just don't think about some of the things that could happen until it actually happens, and so it makes you think differently about it. So this year we're trying to take all those precautions in mind and really make sure everyone's comfortable here. Light Horse will be fully staffed on board, and working with different organizations, and I think this year we're as prepared as we can be as far as safety goes.
Yeah, you come out to the festival, you'll see the tower and everything. They have a view of everything out here, and there's law enforcement everywhere. So very safe environment, very great environment, a very cheap free environment for folks out there on a budget.
Yeah.
What a great place to bring the kids, let them hang out at the carnival, go over and see some of the games happening at the softball fields. There's a rodeo right there, and as you can see, the amphitheater that we're standing at, the big concerts on Friday and Saturday night. Kyle, thank you so much. Is there anything I didn't cover that you would like to add?
No, I think you covered it all. Just everyone this year, just pay attention to the parking. We changed it up a little bit this year, and so we're trying to provide more spots, and we'll be parking a little bit north of the grounds this year instead of across the street from the Omniplex entrance, and we'll have some overflow parking as well. So hopefully we have more spots this year and some more controlled parking situation also.
Sounds great. Well, Kyle, I hope this doesn't change you too much. I know you've always been a nice guy, so I hope you're not too stressed after this.
I think we'll be okay, but I guess I don't know until it's over. So.
Well, thanks so much, Kyle. Man, it's good talking with you this morning. The 44th Annual Muskogee Creek Nation Festival. It all kicks off this coming week, Thursday night, with the Stomp Dance, Living Legends ceremony, and then, of course, all weekend long, all things Creek out here at the Claude Cox Omniplex in Okmulgee for the 44th Annual Muskogee Creek Nation Festival.
Make a memory by coming back home. Make a memory by immersing yourself in Muskogee culture. Make a memory that will last a lifetime. Make a memory at this year's 44th Annual Muskogee Creek Nation Festival in Okmulgee.
Make your memories with 4 days of free family fun at the Muskogee Creek Nation's annual festival, June 21st through the 24th in Okmulgee. For more festival information, visit creekfestival.com. And thanks again to Kyle Lee and all the people putting on the Creek Festival. Come out this week and have a great time with us in Okmulgee. Well, we're going to take you to the vault to close the show today, and we've got a archived look at Native American games.
Funding for this program and the accompanying exhibit and interpretive materials has been awarded from the Oklahoma Foundation for the Humanities and the National Endowment for the Humanities. Additional donations were provided by the W.H. Bryan Company and STX Incorporated. The following program on Native American games has been sponsored by the Muskogee Creek Nation and the Stovall Museum of Science and History, the University of Oklahoma. This is Tulak Klishko, the most famous Choctaw stickball player of his tribe, painted by George Catlin in 1849. Tulak Klishko received as much honor as the greatest of warriors, hunters, or leaders. The Choctaws, like all Native Americans, were intrigued by the ideas of competition, sportsmanship, and skill. However, they played games for many reasons, from recreation to problem solving. And games were an important part of life for every Native American. There were games for teaching survival skills. Here, two boys practiced with bows and arrows to see who could come closest to a small target. This game helped them develop hunting skills. There were games for social gatherings and communication, like dice games. There were games that were part of mythology, like shinny, played with a curved stick and ball. The Wichitas believed that the morning star, called having power to carry light, and the moon, called bright shining woman, had a special relationship to shinny. Having power to carry light gave the shinny ball to men on Earth and showed them how to play the game, and told them that the speed of the game would let them travel from place to place quickly and safely. Bright Shining Woman also taught the women, and uses the game to escape death in some of the Wichita stories. There were games for men and games for women, and some games were played together. Children often played junior versions of the adult games, like these two boys ready to play stickball. Of course, in addition to all these reasons, games were played for fun, as these men who were enjoying a guessing game. Joe Rockboy, a Yankton Sioux, described games as part of special Indian events.
We had get-togethers on our reservation, where people assembled for good times. At the fairgrounds, there was the annual agricultural fair. The purpose of the fair was to give Indian farmers a chance to show everybody their produce. Another thing we liked at the fair was that it gave us Yanktons a chance to play games.
Before the arrival of the Europeans, Native American games fell into three categories: games of chance, skill and dexterity, and physical competition. Dice games were very popular. In the simplest form, it consisted of throwing or tossing the dice, usually in a basket, and wagering on the outcome. Games were usually played by men and women separately. Dice came in many forms. Those made from bone, stone, wood, and fruit pits. This is a Cherokee gaming basket. The dice were made of rhododendron wood carved to look like insects. And here are Pawnee dice made from wild plum pits. In another version of the dice game, stick dice of cane or wood were used. These were split pieces, round on one side and flat on the other, as these which have a colorful rawhide carrying case. Stick dice were especially popular with Plains tribes. To throw the dice, they were grasped in one hand and thrown down hard, end first, on a stone board or hard flat ground. Usually 4 dice were used with a combination of markings or colors giving different scores. Scores were kept with counting sticks. The dice boards or stones were often decorated with tribal symbols, as shown by this Caddo board, dice, and counters. Dice were also used in more complex games similar to modern-day board games. Navajo women used a circle of stones as a pathway. Moves around the circle were determined by the dice, and the winner was the first player who went around the circle. The Kiowa women used a game cloth with symbols. The areas between the double lines were creeks. When a player threw the dice and the count landed on the creek, the player fell into the creek and had to start over. Apparently, the women wet their fingers before throwing, calling out the number they wanted to have. Played for fun, the games often lasted half a day, with plenty of laughter and jokes about the fortunes and misfortunes of the players. Another type of chance game involved the concealment of some object, with players attempting to guess the whereabouts. In the moccasin game, teams faced each other. A small object was hidden in a moccasin, and each team took turns guessing where it was hidden. Using a long stick pointer, each player pointed to his opponent's moccasin, carefully watching the expression of the player's face, looking for some clue. Bystanders sang songs and made comments to try and catch team members off guard. Finally, the player would flip over a moccasin with the pole, hoping to find the hidden button. The hand game was another hiding game, similar to the moccasin game. Teams tried to hide a small bead in their hands. Through singing and hand movements, they tried to bluff and confuse their opponents. Score was kept with special counters, as these Osage sticks adorned with hawk feathers. The atmosphere was often tense, as the players and audience often bet horses, guns, knives, personal property, and goods. Hand games were an important part of annual meetings, especially between Plains tribes. Games of skill and dexterity were extremely popular among all tribes. These games allowed individuals to display their skill in such games as hoop and pole, spear throwing, bow and arrow, and ring and pin. Hoop and pole was one of the most popular, a game to see who was the most skillful spear or dart thrower. This is the way Joe Rockboy remembers it.
Another traditional game was wands and hoops. Here the thing they tried to accomplish was to throw spears through a rolling hoop. The hoop man would say something to try to distract his opponent. Then he threw that hoop. He might say, "I'm a horse thief," or maybe, "I'm wearing a dirty breechcloth." The spear thrower would say something back like, "I like to scalp horse thieves." Then he'd try to concentrate and throw his spears through the rolling hoop.
Most hoops were woven so as to create many small target openings. Scores depended on which hole the spear or pole hit or passed through. A more difficult version of this game was played with bows and arrows and smaller hoops. Spears, darts, and arrows were also thrown for distance. The tips of these Kiowa throwing arrows are elaborately decorated with symbols representing the 4 directions, lightning, day or dawn, and others. Cup and pin, or ring and pin, was a game which one person could play. Most of the games, like this one, were made from deer toe bones with holes drilled in them. They were attached in a row to a metal, bone, or wooden pin. To play, the pin was held in one hand, and the bones were flipped or tossed with the same hand. As the bones swung through the air, the player tried to push the pin through as many holes, or certain high-scoring holes, as possible. Wintertime was a gaming time for many Native Americans. Throwing snow snakes and snow sliders on ice or packed snow was a popular gaming activity. The snakes were made of polished wood and carved and painted to look like real snakes. The bone sliders were made from rib bones of buffalo or beef. 2 sticks were stuck in the ribs, and feathers from hawks or owls were attached. Sliders also had carvings of birds, dragonflies, or other animals known for their flying ability. Some historians have estimated that these snakes and sliders were thrown for more than a mile across frozen lakes, reaching speeds near 100 miles an hour. Sleds were also made of ribs, and like the other winter sports, were often a way to spend time when hunting and travel were difficult. Most games of skill and dexterity were played for amusement. Native Americans played many games which demanded strength, stamina, speed, courage, and team play, similar to many present-day sports. There were plenty of foot races, canoe races, and wrestling matches. But the most exciting games were played with sticks and balls of some kind. Like hockey, the play was rough and spirited, and sometimes the games were played on ice. Listen to the way Joe Rockboy described shinny.
One of the traditional games was shinny. Someone made a ball by rolling up a deer's tail and covering it over with deer skin. They'd team up on different sides. Each person took a hickory or ash stick about 25 or 30 inches long, and they went after that deerskin ball just like in a soccer game. Sometimes they'd play for half a day. They'd rest up and go at it again after dinner. The side that put the ball over the opposing team's goal 2 out of 3 games would win the match.
Double ball was played almost exclusively by women throughout the Plains area. Game equipment consisted of 2 balls held together by a thong. Wichita double balls had long buckskin fringes and were brightly colored. Most balls were made of buckskin and filled with sand, but the shapes, decorations, and sizes varied. Each player tried to catch and toss the double ball or carry it over the opponent's goals by means of a bent or curved stick. Double ball was played for amusement, but was also referred to in Wichita tales as a magical implement used in traveling. The most famous of all Native American games was stickball, called lacrosse in modern times. By using 2 sticks, stickball was played by the woodland tribes in the southeast. In these tribes, stickball was the most revered of all sports, and they nicknamed this game the Little Brother of War. The northern woodland tribes, the Sioux, Iroquois, and tribes in the Great Lakes area, played the game with a single stick. When early French explorers saw the stick, they named the game lacrosse because the sticks resembled a bishop's crozier or staff. The Iroquois sticks had a large netted area, especially suited for catching and throwing. Other sticks had small, round pockets or narrow ones. Most sticks were made of pecan or hickory wood with laces of deer skin or plant fiber to form the netting. The Cherokees sometimes twisted bat whiskers in the strings and tied feathers from purple martins and crested flycatchers to their sticks. They believed this would make their movements swift, accurate, and deceptive to their opponents. The balls were made of deer skin tightly stuffed with deer or gray squirrel hair. The game was played on a clear field, at each end of which was erected a goal consisting of 2 poles set into the ground, sometimes with a crossbar. The game was a team effort, and the object was to throw the ball between the poles or hit a pole with the ball. Either achievement scored a point. Stickball was probably the roughest, most exciting, and hotly contested sport that has been played in this country. It was played exclusively by men of great athletic ability who observed rigorous training procedures and abstained from certain foods or habits which were thought to bring bad luck. Women were not allowed to touch the players' sticks. Preparations for actual games were attended by much ceremony, dancing and singing, which might last all night before the games. Medicine men using special objects as pipes, fans, and whistles would chant prayers for their team's victory. Fights, broken bones, cuts, and even deaths might occur during the games. George Catlin, the artist who painted this scene, describes the excitement of the game.
There are times when the ball gets to the ground and such a confused mass rushing together around it and knocking their sticks together without the possibility of anyone getting or seeing it for the dust that they raise, that the spectator loses his strength and everything else but his senses. When the condensed mass of ball sticks and shins and bloody noses is carried around the different parts of the ground for a quarter of an hour at a time without any one of the mass being able to see the ball.
Women were known to run alongside the players and whip them if they were not playing hard enough. The appearance of the players was very striking. The men wore no clothing except bright-colored breechcloths or short pants, and they went barefoot except in the winter. Tails of deer, squirrel, and horse were attached to the breechcloths, and players tried to match the moves and speed of these animals. On their heads, the men wore roaches, feathers, or caps, and around their necks they wore fringes or manes of horsehair or cloth. You can imagine. Noah Frazier, a Choctaw who played in many games, tells you what he remembers.
They were strong and athletic men, straight as arrows and fleet as deer, nearly nude excepting a broad piece of white cloth around the hips, while some had a tail of a squirrel or deer, or ears of a deer or owl, or some kind of feathers, either pinned on their wearing apparel or on the garment they wrapped up with. Now and then a red ribbon or red cloth was flying which was fastened around someone's body. The forest would ring with their exulting songs and defiant banter as they gave intimation of the great feats of strength and endurance, speed, and activity they were to display.
Today, Native Americans are still intrigued by the ideas of competition, sportsmanship, and skill, but the games they play are different from those played in the old days. The tribes quickly adopted new games introduced by the European immigrants, including card games like Monte, played by this group of Kiowas near Anadarko, Oklahoma. Sometimes new games evolved from the two cultures. These playing cards are made of painted rawhide. The four suits are bird, corn, sun, and spear. Numbers are from 1 to 7, and the face cards are of 3 male figures. Sometimes there was no choice about playing new games. Stickball was outlawed in Mississippi and Oklahoma for many years, apparently because the new governments thought they were likely to incite unrest among the tribes. However, baseball, basketball, and football were acceptable and provided an outlet for many young Native Americans as the traditional games and culture were discouraged. Not all the original games were lost, however. Lacrosse began to be played by non-Native Americans late in the 1800s. In Oklahoma, lacrosse is actively played by teams at the University of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State University, and club teams in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Native Americans still play lacrosse, and the Iroquois Nation sponsors men's and women's teams that play traditional and modern-day games. Stickball is still played in Oklahoma by members of the Muskogee Creek Nation and by the Choctaws in Mississippi. The Creeks carry on many of the original gaming ceremonies and traditions. Two styles of play exist: a friendly social style played by family and friends in the summer, and a competitive style played only by men. In the social style, a single pole is used and scores are made by hitting the pole or a cow skull on top of the pole. The men's game is played in the fall with traditional all-night ceremony and dance before the game. The medicine men are still highly esteemed by the traditional people. Their chanting before the beginning of the game is a prayer to the One above all, that he watch over the players. The sticks are nearly identical to those used 100 years ago, and the red breechcloth, neckpiece, and sashes are still worn. The sticks are still made by Jonah Sands. The Creeks have maintained the stickball tradition despite discouragement by the government and the lure of games like baseball. For the Muskogee Creeks, stickball remains an important social interaction and cultural force, just as in the past. Thus, for all Native Americans and non-Native Americans, games are a source of cultural diversity, pride, sportsmanship, skill and exercise, and fun.
Hey folks, that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Muskogee Vision. We want to thank you all for joining us and encourage you to come out with us in Okmulgee this week and enjoy the 44th Annual Muskogee Creek Nation Festival, and stay on our YouTube channel. We're going to have lots of great footage on there this week, or In Case You Missed It. That's a very popular series from us during the festival, basically taking the festival experience to your YouTube watching experience. So everybody out there, have a great week. We can't wait to see you out at the Muskogee Media Tent. I'm Jason Salzman, and you're watching Muskogee Vision.